Hello and welcome to the Fintech Finance Virtual Arena. We hope you're doing well in these rather extraordinary times. Over the past couple of months and even years, investors have seen a shift. People have been taking money out of mainstream investments, your FTSE 100s, and into investments which are good for the planet. Between April and July, Brits alone poured a record-breaking £1.2 billion into environmental, social and governance funds, or ESGs. Today we're talking to a fintech who's capitalizing on that trend while trying to do the best for the planet, Clim8. And we're talking to Duncan Grierson, the CEO and founder. Duncan, thank you so much for joining us here today. How are you doing?
Super well, thank you. Great to meet.
Well, excellent. It's absolutely brilliant to have you on. So, Duncan, I've got to ask first, can you give our viewers a bit of a background to Clim8? Can you give me your elevator pitch, please?
Okay, so Clim8 is a smartphone app that allows anybody to invest into sustainability. So we're very much focused on the environment, and we've curated portfolios of companies in a range of sustainable themes that allows anybody to have an impact with their savings.
Well, I mean, with that in mind, one thing you could maybe categorize the financial industry as doing is talking a lot, but not actually acting on it. So, I mean, more and more digital investment platforms we're seeing, as you say, offer that ESG service. You say you focus more on that E. I mean, what would you say to maybe cynical people that say you're just greenwashing? How can you prove that you're really putting your money where your mouth is?
I guess it comes back to the underlying investment. So we've built this portfolio, highly diversified, more than a couple of hundred stocks, and each of those companies is making an impact. And that's really the only way you can, if you like, avoid the greenwashing that some people in the asset management, wealth management industry are doing. And that's really kind of bottom-up analysis. What are the companies that your money is ultimately going into? And so that's not, that's certainly not investing in oil and gas, so negative screening, that's a decent start, but we're doing much more than that. We're not just negatively screening out, if you like, the fossil fuel companies and the weapons companies and tobacco and all those other kind of nasties. And we're not just sort of sitting in the middle, investing in big tech, Alphabet and Microsoft and other large companies, which those are not green stocks for us. We're going all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and we're looking for companies that have products and services that are solutions to the climate change crisis. So that's a mixture of clean energy, but also tech companies that are focused on making a difference. And so, so it's really about focus. So for us, this is all we do. We like to think of ourselves as experts. The investment team. We've got a combined 40, 50 years of investment in clean energy and sustainability. And that's a little bit different from what a number of other platforms and asset managers are doing. So we like to think of ourselves as pure play and very much focused on the E of ESG.
Absolutely brilliant. And we're starting to see that more and more with financial technology platforms actually offering up a specialized service rather than this kind of catch-all that maybe, we saw some fintechs do at the beginning. We're starting to see that actually there seems to be this very successful idea of just focusing on one thing because people are used to having all these different apps. So, I mean, with that in mind, obviously you focus specifically on the E of ESG, but, does that end up dipping into, the social and the governments as a result? Because it's such an all-encompassing, the environment, it affects every part of our waking day.
No, that's exactly right. So our first filter is the E, but we're also filtering for the S and the G. But for us, that's the primary filter. So to be in our portfolio, you need to have a product or service that is making a difference on sustainability and the climate change. So that's our primary filter, but we absolutely focus on S and G. So for example, Tesla is not in our portfolio. That's been a very exciting stock. Investors in that have done extremely well. It's definitely in the E of ESG, but it has some challenges around the S and the G, which are widely known. So we're looking to provide a balanced portfolio, not overly risky, and provide good returns. And actually our portfolio over the last year would have given a return of 10.4% after fees to investors. So it actually would have been given very good outperforming returns, despite not having any big tech in there. As I said earlier, a lot of the sustainability funds are actually using they have big tech in there, and they're not really focused on sustainability as such. And we think that if you're going to do a proper job on this, you really need to be focusing on those companies that are making a positive impact. So this is, if you like, this is real impact investing, and not greenwashing, as you mentioned earlier.
I was sorry to bring that up, but it's one of these things where it's become such a topic of debate. To be the most socially forward thinking, it often comes with that kind of tag along. But I mean, with that in mind, what would you say to people who are not convinced by green investing? We already heard about that 10%, coming off of this portfolio. But what would you say to the people that think that ESG funds or green investing is still just a flash in the pan?
Yeah, I would say that this is here for the long term, because consumers and buyers of products and services are moving away from those companies that have historically sold products and services which are damaging to the environment. The most obvious is oil and gas. Oil and gas, those stocks are well down in the last few years, partly because of COVID and the lack of need for fossil fuels and energy generally, but also just a movement away from dirty energy to clean energy. And there's been a massive growth in the development of solar energy, wind energy, and other more interesting technologies like hydrogen is beginning to come through. And so there's all sorts of interesting technologies that are now at scale and are economic. And so solar and wind are now cost comparative with fossil fuels. And in some parts of the world, they're actually cheaper than putting in a coal power plant. So if you're investing into those sectors, it's quite likely that you as a company, as an investment for people in their portfolio, you're going to do pretty well. And that had actually been the case. So as I said, our portfolio over the last 12 months has done very well. And that wasn't just screening out oil and gas, which is not doing well. It's been positively screening in those companies that are making a difference. And I think, generally, with COVID, people are beginning to think even more about, the products and services that they use as consumers. I think people are, they're flying less, obviously, but we're also consuming less meat, we're cycling more, we're thinking more about fast fashion. Should we be buying so many clothes and then using them once or twice and then putting them in the bin? I think there's a big wave, particularly amongst millennials, against those kinds of products. And I think, we're part of that movement, if you like. And by empowering people to invest into the companies that are doing the right thing and are in the right end of the spectrum, if you're an investor in those companies, we believe you'll also do very well.
Excellent. And I've got to ask this because it almost feels absurd at this point to ask this question, but it's a real thing. What would you say to people that are not convinced by climate change itself? I mean, would you try and potentially attract them just purely on terms of really the returns on investment?
I think if you're still denying climate change at this point, then that it's going to be challenging to persuade you. But I think the fact that we've had wildfires in California for the last 5 years, the Amazon rainforest is being burnt down, the Australian wildfires, there are multiple examples every single year of how climate changing is impacting our world. And it's not just far off in developing countries, it's now on our doorstep. America has been particularly impacted the last few weeks in California and Oregon. So yeah. I think not everybody, but many people are working at the fact that climate change is a thing. And even if you don't believe it's a thing, yeah, spot on, the returns can be very good. So even if cynically you don't believe in climate change, if you look at the numbers from performance of putting your money into companies that are, if you like, the right side of history, you will have done well. And we believe that's going to be an ongoing thing. As I said, as consumers and as companies, as buyers of those products and services move more and more in that direction, we only see this going one way. We don't see people moving back. We don't see oil and gas coming back strong. There's more and more clean energy. There's more and more solar and wind getting developed, getting installed, and these kinds of investments should prove to be useful and good over the long term.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking now actually at the technology sitting behind Clim8. How do you look to kind of place customers into these portfolios? Do you use a kind of human element where there's actually a discussion about what you want to be a part of, or do you use an algorithm to kind of slot these customers in perfectly, seamlessly, and quickly?
So we're starting with, if you like, a simple product that is very simple to onboard and allows you to very quickly feel that you're empowered investing for the right things. So we're starting out with a suite of portfolios. They're not individualized for each person, but we do give you the option to invest in a different risk profile. So that's kind of our core offering to start with. Over time, yes, we would absolutely like to be able to offer a portfolio which is a bit more personalized to you. So if you're particularly interested in sustainable food, there's a big movement away from meat and into plant-based burgers, for example. There's been a few companies in that space that have listed them extremely well recently. So if you're really interested in that, for example, the ability to have a portfolio which is perhaps slightly overweighted towards a theme that you're very interested in, that is part of our roadmap. But our day one product is keep it simple. These are the themes we're investing in, and everybody gets a piece of what's in our portfolio. And exactly what you get will depend on your risk appetite. Are you cautious, something in the middle, or a bit more adventurous? And that's how we're starting.
Excellent. And I mean, something that's become overwhelmingly popular due to the pandemic has become kind of share trading platforms and being able to just invest according to the price rather than buying actual shares. So, I mean, are you looking to offer up a green version of that going forward and kind of capture that millennial market?
So we see ourselves, I guess, closer to a fund manager, to an expert fund manager rather than a kind of a DIY Spotify-esque type platform. There's a number of those out there. Well, I think what we bring is a whole layer above that, which is expertise, experience around sustainable investing. The team we've built, and indeed our advisors and our investment committee, we've built a very strong group of people around the business. So this is deep expertise, and we think to do it properly, it's best if we build portfolios for you. Over time, there'll be some sophistication around exactly, if you like, individualizing it, as you mentioned earlier, but we're not planning to offer, if you like, a free trade type platform where you can pick and choose amongst hundreds of different shares. That's not the route we're going. We think that most people would prefer to have a portfolio self-made for them. It's about making it easy, accessible, and making people feel empowered to make a difference with a simple and beautiful app, easy to use.
Excellent. And I guess continuing this theme of looking into the future then for Clim8, do you think that we'll start seeing other climate-friendly financial services, potentially pensions going forward, junior ISAs?
Yeah, so we're starting with an ISA. We're likely to go into a junior ISA, lifetime ISA, SIPs. That's absolutely in the roadmap. So we're starting with a basic ISA and a GIA, a general investment account. But yeah, absolutely, it's in our roadmap to move into those things. And clearly, the SIP market, for example, is a very big market. And again, I have my own SIP, which I typically play around with on one of the larger platforms. And part of the genesis for this idea was, it would be great if somebody could help me pick, the better stocks that are having an impact on climate change. So I think I did sort of personally for myself a decent job on that, but having a team of people who are experts in building those portfolios, we believe is the way forward and should allow us to have an impact. Part of our mission is not only to grow our AUM and therefore have an impact on the problem by putting money into the right things, but it's also raise awareness. So if you're not investing with us, perhaps you can pick some stocks on one of the more generalist platforms, and perhaps we can help guide you in that direction. But yeah, our mission is both about AUM and also about education and awareness, and just feeling empowered.
Yeah. I think, that goes such a long way emotionally and morally going forward. And I think that's coming in at such a perfect time, as you mentioned, with this millennial demand and the demand post pandemic. Now, if I could go a bit, of a step back and kind of, you mentioned some of your personal aspirations, your aspirations for climate. Now, you yourself, I think it's fair to call yourself almost a serial kind of entrepreneur. You've created, is it 6 companies so far? And did these experiences inspire Clim8? Did you go through different companies and realize actually you wanted to do something that could contribute more to the world?
Yeah, I've sort of kind of lost track of how many companies I've built or helped build. Part of it, I've been a little bit on the sidelines as a coach. I've invested a bit and helped the founders of different businesses. But my journey's been quite a long one. I started life as a lawyer, and then I discovered venture capital and thought that's what I want to do. And then whilst I was in VC in the early 2000s, I started working on an environmental opportunity, and I went down the bunny hole and read lots and lots around climate change and really around pollution. It was really pollution focused at the time, and there was lots of environmental legislation beginning to come through. And I drank the Kool-Aid, and then I started my first business, which was a waste to biofuel business. So we took household waste and converted it into a biofuel. And then more recently, I've been helping other founders, if you like, on the journey. So I was quite closely involved in a solar battery business. Some very clever guys have developed a software platform for aggregating energy from solar batteries in everyone's home, and the ability to sell that as a virtual power plant, so sell the energy into the grid and potentially to your neighbor. So I invested a little bit and helped those guys with that. And I was really looking for kind of the next thing to do, and I had various ideas actually around platforms, and I thought I could have the biggest impact if I built this platform and empower potentially millions of people to make a difference with their money. And I'm most excited about this. I think of all the ventures I've been involved in over the years, this one I really actually am the most excited about. I think we can not only, as I said, make a difference, but we can also just raise awareness around impact investing. And there's some research that actually you can make a bigger impact with your savings and your pension than with all the other things, these kind of lifestyle changes, which are important, but actually having an impact with your money can be quite significant if they're going into the right things. Well, that's a great thing to hear as someone that is used to flying once a week. I feel like I need to do some work the other way. So that's absolutely brilliant to hear. Now, speaking of this kind of startup mentality, did you notice any differences when starting up Clim8? Was there a bit more pushback because it was economically focused? Was there any surprises when you built this one up? To be honest, I had a lot of interest pretty much from day one. So I started working on the idea perhaps 18 months ago, and I started socializing it with friends and potential investors, and pretty much to the person, they thought it was a good idea and this needed to exist. And then the more I went down, if you like, into my research and discovered that the wealth management industry is currently not doing a great job on this. There's a lot of kind of jumping on the green bandwagon, but quite a lot of funds are not necessarily investing in what people in the street might think that the money's going into. So no, there wasn't a tremendous amount of pushback. I guess the challenge for us is this is an AUM business, so we need to get to scale. And as you'll know, and your listeners will know, for us to become a sustainable business ourselves, we do need to get to scale. But I'm hopeful that because this is such an interesting topic, that it's actually not a niche. It does touch on everything. Carbon has an impact on every aspect of our lives, from what we eat to how we move around, to holidays that you touched on, to our housing, to transportation. So it's just carbon. The carbon impact, the climate impact is ubiquitous. Everything has a carbon footprint, and so our belief is that we could potentially be one of those fintech unicorns that scales very fast, because this is a product which should touch quite a lot of people. Yeah, I completely agree. And well, I guess with that mind, in a way that we can maybe help that out. I mean, can you give me some more details about the product itself? Do you have a launch date currently? So we've launched, if you like, in beta. We've started onboarding people from our 10,000 waiting list. And I guess we are hopeful we'll be in the App Store or Google Play by November time. We want to make sure that the product is functioning, on every device. We're already functioning on, on our iPhone and Android, so it's on both platforms. But we want to make sure it's delighting our users, that the onboarding is fast and friction free, and that the product itself, once you're on the app, is a good product. Simple and beautiful. We want to keep it simple and beautiful. So I think what we have is pretty good. I think we could launch tomorrow, but we're kind of iterating on it. And we're also just making sure we can, keep our customers happy as they onboard. So some sort of good hand-holding for the first customers.
Yeah, well, with that in mind, obviously you have a very, I guess, currently a particular audience with a huge demand for this kind of product. So with that in mind, is there a kind of a minimum entry point? And how can you help these people who might not have dabbled in this financial service before kind of get started?
Yeah, so we're starting with a quite a low threshold of £25. So it's not zero, but it is quite a low threshold. You're probably aware some of the other wealth tech platforms have a much higher threshold. We want to, if you like, democratize. It's a completely cliched phrase, but that is part of our mission, is to get this product into lots of people's hands. And even if they don't invest huge amounts of money, again, awareness we think is an important thing. So if they're not personally investing a huge amount, perhaps their friends or even their parents might invest more sums, and just generally raise awareness, not only of our platform, but this kind of product exists and you can make a difference with your money. So yeah, so it's a relatively low threshold for the minimum investment.
Excellent. Well, and I think that is just absolutely critical going forward. And speaking of going forward, what can we expect to be reporting on when we get you on the show again in the next 5 years?
Crikey, yeah. I mean, our ambitions are quite big. We'd like to get to the sort of into the billions of AUM. Everyone's followed, certainly your readers, listeners will be sort of aware of the challenges of wealth tech platforms getting to scale. But we're hopeful of getting into those sorts of numbers, sort of into the billions. And yeah, raising awareness of how you can make a difference with your money.
Excellent. Now, from my notes, I see that all new joiners get a tree planted for them. Is that correct?
That's correct. So everybody who joins our early access waitlist, which is now 10,000 people, we're planting a tree. And if you refer it to some friends and contacts, we'll plant a tree for them as well. So we're trying to encourage people to engage, to come take a look at what we're doing by planting a tree. So of course that fits our theme of sustainability, and we can have an impact with that as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, I think that's all we have time for. Duncan, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've had a good time yourself.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm happy to do it again another time.
Oh, well, I look forward to seeing it when it comes out. So, and to all our viewers also, thank you so much for watching. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at www.fintechf.com, and of course, YouTube and LinkedIn. So I'll see you then. Cheers. Goodbye.